on it. All right, listen. So, you've all read Megan's books already, right? So we don't need to sell the book at all, I don't think. Because if you know Megan, if you've read one book by Megan Abbott, you want to read them all. I love your book so much. That's how we met. I'm a giant fan. I wrote you a fan letter. What year was that?
2007 maybe?
2007. I wrote you a fan letter, and that's how we became friends. And I love every book you've ever written, and this one is amazing. You gotta buy it. That's all I'm saying. And I think we're done. I guess in some ways it's different. Okay, I think of all of Megan's books as being in what I call the MANU, the Megan Abbott novelistic universe. Look, Megan's a big Marvel movie fan. She loves Ant-Man, she loves all that stuff. But I feel like your books all take place in a certain kind of universe that you created in your mind. They're our world, but they're also like a little different. Am I right?
I think so. Sort of tilted side, or like heightened. Heightened maybe would be the
that's
way.
a great word.
Yeah, because they're more about how the characters feel than an objective reality. And so it's, realistic about the feeling less than the actions. I think that feels true, or like turned sideways maybe.
Yeah, well, a lot of your books, some of your books have been about family in a way, but this book is really, really about some family drama. Do you think it's different than your other books in a way?
I would say it's both the same, and it's different in that to the annoyance of some people that read them, I don't say where books are set. It's sort of any town USA or any suburb USA, and this one is explicitly set in my hometown of Grosse Pointe, outside of Detroit. And it's set there because of the specifics of, it's a book about, suburban women who, are in economic distress and need to make money. And I grew up in suburban Detroit when the auto industry was on the decline. So everyone had lost all their money, and the glory days were over, and it really was felt like end times. And so it sort of suited the subject of the book. So I finally had to write about a book set in my hometown after avoiding it for 11 books.
Right.
I just had to do it.
But talk about the family aspect of it, because this is, you've written about families many times in your novels, but this really has a fascinating relationship between the three sisters in the book.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of, sisters are storied. We were talking about Russian writers before. The sisters are, a long time literary tradition, but I think I don't have any sisters. I have a brother, but I've always been fascinated by sisters because of their, there's sort of a particular quality. Sisters where you sort of share so much, you have a lot of loyalty to each other, but there's also like the history of petty grievances and passive aggression and old grudges that you hold over from childhood. And I always think of even siblings in general as you're sort of all veterans from the same war, the war being your childhood. And so you sort of carry so much. So this is three sisters who are now all in their 40s, but they all have these sort of grudges based on their childhood. And they all have these sort of memories of, how things were in their childhood. And the youngest sibling had a very different childhood than the oldest sibling. This is true in many families, right? There might be 10 years between you, so you had really different childhood. In this case, the oldest child remembered economic abundance in the household. The youngest child remembers only like precarious economics. So it's sort of a way to explore these women's relationships to money based on how they share.
Well, you mentioned economics, and this book really is, in one word, sort of about money, and sort of, look, I was raised Southern Baptist, and I remember that the love of money is the root of all evil. But that's sort of almost the theme of this book in a way, right?
True.
Because money is scary in this book. And am I wrong that that's what the book is about, is money in a way?
I think you're right. I think it. There's a sort of women who are not. So these are sort of ladies who lunch, essentially. They're women who've always been raised with money around them, and the money's gone away, and so they really. The sort of loss of identity, right? If you were raised to be one of the women at the country club who organized the events, who sort of ran the charities, who hosted parties, and like, who are you when that money's gone? And what they seem to find out is that they are organized criminals ultimately, and that there's ways to make money that aren't exactly legitimate, but it does. It is a. I mean, it's certainly, you're right, it's a corrupting force for all of them, but they were sort of raised in a fallen world, right? They were raised in, the culture of money. Big car, Detroit, industry is thriving, we're all doing great until we're not. It's boom or bust. It's real. I hadn't intended the book to be as timely as it was, but it feels unusually timely in the sense that we're sort of this history of America as being boom or bust, and hustlers and
I don't know what you're talking about.
yes. So yeah, I think it is about, if one word, it would be money.
Yeah, I do think it's about money. Your characters, sisters. Okay, you say you had a brother. You didn't have sisters. So how did you get into this mindset of this? Because really, one of the greatest things about the book is the relationship between these three sisters. So how did you get into that?
It's very different than having a brother, I will say, because none of this stuff comes up. It's so easy to have a brother, but women are complicated creatures, and these women are complicated. And it's, I've written a lot, almost pathologically, about women in groups and how terrifying they are to me, and so it is based a lot on that and the way that the sort of passive-aggressive ways which women enact their anger towards each other.
There's one phrase in the book I remember when your character's at a party and there are some women standing together at a party, and you describe them as a creamy fist. It's like some women standing together and they're a creamy fist. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And this makes me also think of another scene where they're driving and your character sees a batting cage and it's like a giant spider. And to me, this is one of the main things. That's what makes it a Megan Abbott novel for me. But we've talked about David Lynch a lot.
Yeah.
And he died earlier this year, but you could talk about maybe how David Lynch has inspired your work.
Yeah, no, hugely. I mean, I've thought of it more since he passed away back in January, because, I grew up in suburbia. This is a novel set in suburbia, where, and I had the sense growing up that many of us who grew up in suburbia had that there was stuff going on that we didn't have access to, that behind every house, behind every front door, there was untold bad behavior, evil, sin, etc. That was sort of my feeling, and no one would ever talk about it, especially because it was the Midwest, and no one ever talked about it.
It wasn't that way in Alabama.
No.
In Alabama, everybody was nice, everything was fine.
It's clearly the exception. But I saw Blue Velvet as a teenager. This is where you sort of, it's, white picket fences are literally in the opening credits, and that there's so much sinister stuff going on. It kind of blew open my mind. Like, this is how I feel. I feel like like, I'm not going to believe this, you know, the story they're trying to sell me, that everyone's happy and content in their aluminum siding homes, that there's really treachery going on behind every door. So that definitely, the suburbs feel filled with menace to me now.
And we just talked about, earlier, Megan and I got together, and we talked about movies for like, I don't know, 2 hours or something. But Shadow of a Doubt, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, actually probably has a great influence on your writing, don't you think?
Definitely. That, you know, the amazing screenplay, it's Thornton Wilder, it's really Americana, and the notion, if you've all seen the movie with Joseph Cotton, it's sort of, you know, danger comes to small town America, and it's Hitchcock as this British auteur with a sort of dark sensibility, essentially sort of finding the poisonous worm in the apple of small town America. And that similarly, which I think was a big influence on Blue Velvet, had a huge impact on me, that everything is not as it appears. For sure.
Well, we should take some questions, but first I want to say, look, I mean, people don't like books anymore. Do you guys like books? But I mean, TV and movies are awesome. And you've got a lot of things going. You've got tons of projects going right now, right? With
several. Yeah, I am adapting this book for A24 as a TV series.
This one, the one
yes. And also with them, the Dashiell Hammett novel Red Harvest.
That's one of the best novels really ever. I know Ace. Where's Ace? Is he still here? He left.
He's right there.
But that's one of your favorite novels, right, Ace? Red Harvest, a great novel.
Yeah. It's humbling to work on that. It's easier to adapt my own work than Dashiell Hammett's. But yeah, they're all so fun, and movies are always probably next to books the singular influence on me.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should take some questions from the audience, if you think that's okay.
I should have added this before, that the criminal scheme these women are involved in is a pyramid scheme, which is maybe the quintessential American money-making operation.
I love it. I want to get
and
in
I did
on
an
that.
extraordinary amount of research into pyramid schemes and how they work. And I do feel.
Have you been involved with
I do feel like now I could have one of my own, and I would definitely know how to avert the IRS.
100% be on board. Please, I need money.
They always get it wrong. They always, for instance, if you're going to have a pyramid scheme, don't text about it, don't send emails about it, and also don't. In the bank, when you deposit a sum of money, don't make it over $10,000, and they report it to the IRS. So, so if any of you have questions about your pyramid scheme.
Look, if any of you have learned anything tonight, it's remember, don't deposit more than $10,000 into your account at one time. Any questions from the audience? Hey, look, it's Teresa. What are you chewing, gum?
I am chewing. Thank you for that observation.
I saw what you were doing. Questions? Megan Abbott is one of the greatest, I mean, seriously, one of the greatest writers we have in the country right now.
Thank
and you people have zero questions for her?
The
There
first
you go.
one's always hard.
Was there any true crime basis for this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yes, there was a true. I mean, that's usually how I get started, and I know we've talked about this before. That's usually something I read about, and there was an instance, and these are really common, but there was an instance in Connecticut, in this very sort of posh suburb in Connecticut, much like my hometown, where this suburban woman, lady who lunch, was murdered, and then it was found out that she was involved in this elaborate pyramid scheme. Hundreds of women all throughout Connecticut were involved. They ended up prosecuting 2 of them for what was an elaborate money-making operation, but the rest of them, they were never able to even find out how many women were involved. But it was fascinating to me because this incident took place in 2008, the recession, and it was women who had lost all their money in the recession and the stock market crisis and the housing bubble, and they'd all figured out this great way to make money. And I thought it was so interesting how they all felt, I think legitimately, that we were doing something that their husbands, who were stockbrokers, had been doing for decades. Which is speculating and having loopholes and having sort of ways to sort of get around. I think that they didn't feel like they were doing anything wrong and that they were being targeted. So their sort of justifications were kind of fascinating.
That's definitely in the book. And let me tell you something. I did not see where the book was going, and I was totally shocked by the
stuff. Yeah,
end.
stuff happens.
It was amazing, amazing
thank
stuff.
you.
You guys are gonna love it. Yes, yes.
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
I grew up in Grosse Pointe.
Oh my gosh.
We call this, my daughter and I, the Grosse Pointe of the South. But Southern hospitality is real. Like, we moved here, we've made so many friends, people are so welcoming. And I say all the time, if you moved to Grosse Pointe, you wouldn't have one friend. Nobody would welcome you. Nobody would include you in anything. It's just, do you feel I'm correct?
Yes,
You would
yes.
not break into any circle of friends.
No, that was definitely the Grosse Pointe. The question was, the Grosse Pointe with the experience was that it was not a friendly place, and then you would not be invited into it was not a welcoming place, not a place for outsiders in any way. Very insular community, and that was absolutely the Grosse Pointe I grew up in. And it was really you were defined by which country club you belonged to, and my family didn't belong to any country club, so you can see where we belonged. And it was either you lived near the lake or the freeway, and the number of digits in your address told you, and we lived near the freeway, so it was very hierarchical, and it was really very much tied up with the auto barons and who you knew, and it's changed quite a bit now, but that was definitely the Grosse Pointe. It was an aura of exclusivity, and as my dad always joked, that it's 1954 forever in Grosse Pointe. Eisenhower is still president there, and that was the sort of feeling. So it was definitely.
People don't know they're different points. They're 5 points.
Yes,
So
there are. Yes. So there's the Grosse Pointe Woods and Grosse Pointe Farms and Grosse Pointe City and Grosse Pointe Park, and they are all denote something about you. And notice I didn't say Grosse Pointe Woods, which is where I grew up, which is the trash Grosse Pointe. But I mean, I loved it, but we were considered questionable. And there was the good high school and the bad high school and the private high school, and so they all, there was new money, old money, and no money. It was all, you were all very defined by it. So there was never a moment I wasn't aware of how much money we did or didn't have. So yes, it was. And I think, you never realize you're growing up in a specific place until you try to write about it, and then you realize, wow, there's a reason I have all these attitudes towards money and women in groups. So yes, I'm glad to know that you had the same experience, because that was definitely mine. And it has changed, mostly because no one has any money there anymore. So I guess they're humbled in that way.
It's a little more diverse than it was.
Definitely, it's a big change, and they actually went for Obama, and that, so which never would have happened in my era.
Wow, it's really raining.
It is. I had
What
no
happened?
idea.
Megan
It's
Abbott
like
wrought this. She's a witch.
Come back every day.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, for bringing the rain.
Yes.
Any more
Yeah.
questions? I saw Tom Franklin.
Oh,
Oh, I'm
there's-
sorry. Go ahead.
Just a real quick question. I'm sure it's basic for everybody, but what is it that you have to have when you write? Is there certain things you have to have in order, or anything that you have to have going when you write?
Yeah, so what do I need to have when I write? I would say that for me, technical standpoint, it's the voice. I don't have the book if I don't have the voice. So I might have a story, a situation, but if I haven't figured out who's telling it and what they sound like, then I can't hook into the book. I suppose that's because and I'm sure it's true for many of you, that's what I read for. I read for voice. And if the first page has the voice, I'll go in. So sometimes it's harder to find that voice, and I'll sort of shift the point of who's telling the story, I guess is another way to put it. In this case, which is something I do often, it's the sister that's sort of the outsider among the sisters. So I often write from, I guess, what they call the Nick Carraway position, like his Great Gatsby as an example. Someone who's not is directly involved in the action, so has a little bit more perspective.
In a way, Harper does become very important
Yes.
to the action, but you're right. She starts out from an outsider.
Yes, in
sort of
fact, you
point of
think that she would be unlikely to be as involved as she gets, but I suppose that's the other trope I seem to write a lot, is that someone that then gets sort of drawn into it.
Yeah, it starts out. I mean, Megan always fools you. I don't want to spoil
No, it's
anything,
okay.
but you're always like, it seems one way, and then it turns around and becomes another way. Is that a
Yeah.
fair assessment?
No,
of
I
your
think
work?
it is true, because I don't really, I always think that I'm writing the outsider, and that I always think that they're the straight arrow, and they never are. They never are. They always get too involved. Yes, definitely. It's a great question, though, because that is the sort of thing, like, how, is this the book? Do I have a book here? And that's really the only way I know.
So this is a little bit unrelated to your book. What are you reading now? Like, because obviously none of us like books here, so we don't
Wild
do that.
mind.
Yes. So what am I reading now was the question, because none of us
We've,
Yes,
Megan and I have been in a book club for
launched
just
here.
us.
Yes.
for like how many years?
So
20?
12 years since I lived here. So
And we've read 100 books at least.
yes.
And
right now we're reading a book on the great pioneers in animation. So going back to the 19-teens and 20s, and Felix the Cat, and the Fleischer brothers, and so we have been in this book club forever, where it's just two people, and we read.
We've read
You're never stuck with
the autobiography of Hume Cronin. That's how horrible it is.
It's mostly showbiz related and writers and
only
showbiz.
showbiz.
Yeah, sometimes we've had
We
novelists.
we read Lord Byron, and we counted him as a celebrity.
Thomas
and
Mann.
Oscar Wilde, he's a
Yes,
celebrity.
Kafka.
It's celebrity. Kafka.
Yeah.
Kafka's a big celebrity. People love Kafka. I don't know how that happened.
Sometimes we have a period of rest between our selections,
Very brief.
in which Jack reads great Greek tragedies and I read true crime. And so the most recent one, and maybe other Hollywood memoirs, that are too dark for Jack. But
What?
yeah.
I can handle it.
Sometimes, but I did read a great true crime book that I would say that I'm sure that the store carries, that came out a few months ago, which is called Murderland, written by the woman. If any of you read the great book about Laura Ingalls Wilder that came out, Prairie Fires, a few years ago, but she has the thesis is about that. Why the question is, why were there so many serial killers in the Pacific Northwest in the 70s? And it posits an ecological reason for why that's the case. And it's an amazing, extremely well-researched book, much like Prairie Fires. So I highly recommend it. It's really good, but too upsetting
Terrible.
for our shared interests. What are you reading now?
So right now I'm reading, I blog. So I'm reading a book that won't come out till November.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading The Seven Rings by Nora Roberts.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
And that's the third
Jill Shalkus, Party of Liars by Kelsey Cox, and Dying to Meet You by Serena Bowen.
Okay. See, reading is alive. I mean, that's good on a vacation. 3 books. Excellent. Great. All right.
Well, that's it, everybody. Unless there's one more question. No? I thought I saw Tom Franklin.
there's
Oh,
one.
there we go.
This may be a dumb question, but you obviously have a sense of humor, and there was the reference earlier about Dashiell Hammett, and when he wrote screenplays, he wrote comedies like the Thin Man series. I was wondering
Awesome.
what direction you're going with your screenplay for the television series.
Yes. I mean, certainly that's a big part of Red Harvest. It's always a part of Hammett. There's so much humor in it. And that's sort of one of the leavening features, I guess, because there are 23 murders in that book. It's a sort of slaughterhouse book. So yeah, that's always, I think maybe American crime fiction and British crime fiction, for that matter, has always been a big feature of. And you kind of have to have that, I think. Otherwise, it would be relentless and bleak. So that's a big part of it, definitely. Always for me is to have that. And that's sort of the books that made me start writing the hard-boiled novels like Hammett and Chandler and Kane. They're always filled with humor, don't you think?
Yeah. Especially Chandler.
Yes, I think so. I think that's sort of part of the tradition. So it would be a mistake not to make that the center of it. And there's something about the light and the darkness, the interplay between the two, that it feels very American.
All right, everybody, go line up and buy Megan's book. And she'll sign it for you, I think.
I think so.
Unless she
Thank
looks
you.
at you and... All right.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know.